I've been self-employed in St. Michael's since 1974, and I've been a resident since 2006. In that period of time, I've moved 7 houses in town. But I want to start with some observations. First, I want to thank everybody that stood up and filled the vacancies over the last 6 years. Not an easy task, but everybody should appreciate it. This year, we actually have from 6 for 2. We are now back to some sense of democracy and discussing the issues, which I think is very important. In this period of time, things I've noticed about town, and I'm going to concentrate at the end on the positive, but I'm going to try to get to how we got there. Since 1974-ish, when Brother and I started working, we've lost half of our boat yards, we've lost 2 gas stations, we've lost 2 laundromats, we've lost 2 banks, we've lost 2 hardware stores, we've lost a home fuel oil company, we've lost an outboard repair shop, we've lost our main grocery store, and we sold our utilities company, which was obviously the largest asset the town had. Now, reflecting all that, the town has to operate as a business. You know, people think because it's a town they can tax is money. No, it's a business. We have revenue, we have expenses, we have obligations, and we can make money. One of the things that's perplexing about making money, Thank you.
Hello, Michael Gorman. I live at Dodson Avenue here in St. Michael's, obviously. I'm the shipyard manager for the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. I've been living in St. Michael's for over 10 years now. I have 2 children that go to the public school in Critchlow-Atkins. My wife is a lifelong resident of St. Michael's, and she's also employed by a small business in town. I'm now into my 2nd term on the Waterways Advisory Board as an experience for small town government. And I think the role of town commissioner is not so much about legislation and rules and holding people to lines as much as it is to be a listener to your community and keeping the community together and taking everyone into account so that the town is evolving and we need everyone in town to evolve with it. I happen to live on Dodson Avenue, and I feel I personally am running because I think the commissioners should reflect the whole town, and I have not seen commissioners who are from my neighborhood. We have some things that are different in our neighborhood from the rest of town, and I think it would be good if the whole town is covered by commissioners, and we're making decisions for each one of our small little communities within Greater St. Michael's. So that's the goal.
Good evening, and thank you to the League, Mid-Shore Division, and for Glenda and Hillary in sponsoring tonight. And first of all, I'd like to recognize my fellow candidates. As Tad said, 6 for 2 is a great sign of passion and interest that is going to make our town just a better place to live and work. I believe I'm one of the best candidates tonight for 3 main reasons. I have no special interests. If elected, I will volunteer to fill the big shoes left behind by Roy Myers as the next treasurer, subject to the election of my peers. And I'm already familiar with the town's charter, code, and staff because I've been the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the last 2 years, and I've served on that board for 5 years. With regard to those special interests, I am a property owner here. I have multiple properties, and I've been so for 7 years to the resident full-time for over 2 years. I'm not aligned with any tourist, merchant, or resident groups. In other words, if I take office as elected, I come in with clean hands, I represent a new voice and a new vision, something the town may be able to take advantage of. As we know, Roy Myers is stepping down, and my professional training experience is as a financial analyst. We're 9 years in the longest post-war expansion. The likelihood of a recession before the next election is statistically greater. So I think my first action as both the commissioner and if elected treasurer would be to do a thorough review of the audit that just came out and then a granular detailed review of all departmental budgets. As a member of the BZA, I've already worked with staff I get to know, led by our very competent town manager, Gene Westman. And land use and taxation are two biggest powers that government can affect their residents. So with that, I thank you for your interest, my bio and letter.
My name is Christopher Thomas, and I'm a resident of East Maple Avenue. I've been here for 2 years, and I've been coming to St. Michael's for over 20. My wife and I are dug right in. She's a member of the Classic Wonder Museum, and I am a firefighter and trustee at the St. Michael's Fire Department. What I bring to the table is small business and medium-sized business expertise, which I believe is how the town is run. I've started and sold 3 companies in the past 10 years, and with that level of responsibility, I've learned a lot about how to basically get the most out of anybody's money. I believe that the government should be run like a business, like the other candidates have said. And to me, mid-process privatization of a lot of the things that go on is a great way to retain the taxpayer's value. So for me, I'm a fiscal conservative and a socially liberal person. I don't think there should be a lot of rules about how people run their lives. But at the same time, I think it's extremely important that we stay very fiscally conservative. And with that, thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Hello. I'm Jennifer Stevens. A lot of you know me as Jen. There's lots and lots of familiar faces here. It's really awesome to see everybody that's come out tonight. I have lived here for 10 years now, 12 total, I believe. There was a brief couple of years at the beginning of the 2000s, but I work in town and I walk the streets regularly. Most people know me if they recognize me. It's because I see you walking your dog all the time. So I cover end-to-end, water-to-water line on a regular basis. And in my position as a bartender at Theo's, a job which I love very much and have been told I do quite well, I speak to a lot of people, business owners, non-residents, residents, and I sort of have that ear, that ability to listen and hear concerns and what people are interested in and what they're looking for and what new people coming and property shopping are looking for. And speaking to a couple the other night, they chose St. Michael's over Chestertown and over Cambridge, and they shopped for 3 or 4 years. But it was this thriving community, which is why they finally decided to settle and purchase in this area, which I thought was really cool. I don't have a lot of accreditations. I don't have a whole lot of accolades. I do have a Bachelor of Science in Culinary Nutrition. I did graduate summa cum laude in my class. But I have a pretty good ability to bring people together. I have a vision for the town to keep, I think we're in a great spot and we're in a really good place now. There's no putting smoke where there's no fires at this point. I would just love to be a part of it. When people ask, they gave me this whole, why are you running? I said, well, I live here, I work here, I play here, and I care. And that's what I've got. So thank you guys.
Hello everyone, I'm Jaime Windon, and I'm running for a second term as your town commissioner. Although I've dedicated the last 4 years to working to make St. Michael's a better place, I don't feel like my job is done. St. Michael's is one of many places I've called home, and I moved here from a remote island in Kenya 7 years ago. However, it's definitely the first place that I've put any real roots down. And I attribute that to 3 main things that make St. Michael's a wonderful, unique place. It's an ideal place to live. It's a fabulous place to visit. And from personal experience, it's a great place to do business. And it's all of those things because it's safe, it is beautiful, it's welcoming, and it's vibrant. And so for me, keeping those 3 things in balance, those 3 unique facets, is of utmost importance. Therefore, public safety has been a huge priority for me ever since getting on the commission. I think that protecting the health and welfare of the people who live here and who come here has to be a priority, and I take that responsibility with serious gravity. 5 years ago, I launched Lion Distilling Company, which is a tiny micro distillery located in the Old Mill, where we make grain to glass spirits. We attract tourists, but we also have a thriving wholesale business. We started as a 2-person idea, a passion project, and have grown into a 13-person team. So I'm proud to employ town residents as well as newcomers to our area. 4 years ago, as many of you know, I volunteered for a job that nobody seemed to want. I did not know exactly what I was getting myself into, but I have a long history of saying yes. I believe in standing up, I believe in serving others, and I believe that the role of public servant has been taken lightly by many people globally, and I think I bring a perspective to the role as commissioner that is unique. I don't claim to have all the answers, I don't claim to be perfect, but I will always be better with your input. I am so happy to see so many people running and so many people here tonight. Thank you.
Let's see, zoning code. Not a lot of experience with zoning code, but ready to learn about it. I think look more liberal rules in terms of signage. I think that the ability to, for someone like me who has aging parents, I think an auxiliary dwelling should be allowed, so I can have them living on my property if my property was big enough. I think right now, just in my personal life, that would be a major step forward for me as a landowner in town.
I'm going to have to take a mulligan on some of this because as the current chair, I would have to recuse myself from any specific dealings with any specific case. And I don't think there's a problem with the code. I think there's a problem with the process. Internally, members of the BZA only receive packets 3 to 4 days before they have to adjudicate a matter. That's not enough time. For the last 9 years before I moved here, I served in Virginia's largest municipality on the Board of Equalization. These are fundamental decisions that affect everybody. More time is needed to adequately process and adjudicate for the right reasons and to get the right result.
So my opinion is that one thing that would really help business in town, which I think is crucial, especially with, and I agree, an incoming recession, is dual short-term rentals in the commercial zone. That would allow for a first floor and second floor short-term rental opportunity for landowners. There are several properties on Talbot Street right now that can be converted to that to make income for the owners and thereby the town with the accommodations tax. That would, I think, greatly change the way that the owners are able to make money without any detrimental impact to the feel and vibrancy of the town.
I have to say I'm on board with Chris on that one. I might not say it so eloquently, but short-term rentals are certainly the future, and that's how I travel, and I enjoy it very much. I realize there's a very fine balance if we were to allow more short-term rentals within town limits, in whichever zones they are or not allowed at the moment. I know there are, I think, a select few that are accounted for, but if you do a search on these sorts of things, there are over 50, options. And so short-term rentals, again, way of the future, and we need to make it work best for us.
I don't think there's one thing that leaps out to me that needs changed in the zoning code, but there are multiple problems we currently have. Recently, the commission appointed a committee to look at the zoning code thoroughly. We recently hired a professional to attack the code step by step. So we will be in the process, the town will be in the process of rewriting it. And I think all input for vision going forward would be helpful. Right now, there's a lot of inconsistent language, which leads to sometimes inconsistent interpretation, and that can be absolutely frustrating. So I'd like to write it down.
My main concern was not addressed by anybody. I think the first thing, the most important thing that codes in town should address is signage. When you walk down Talbot Street, either way, there's multiple signs. They are very, loosely interpreted. As a small business owner, if you're on Back Street, you're trying to get advertising or people aware. The sign issue is multifaceted, and I think the town is in serious trouble with the sign limits. I also agree with Chris about the short-term rentals. The accommodations tax in this town is a huge portion of its income, runs around $500,000 a year. And right now, there seems to be great concern with Airbnbs and whether they're licensed and whether they're paying the taxes. My wife and I started the B&B thing. We started the vacation cottage thing years ago, and now there's enough competition, so it's basically, we're not competitive. So, thank you again, dear. Signs.
That's a very loaded question in light of the current code that addresses bulk regulations, impervious surfaces, setbacks, and nonconformity. And the answer will lie depending upon where the property at issue is situated. If you're in the historic district, those lots are not laid out the way the rest of the town is. So there is no one-size-fits-all policy that could answer that question. I do think, though, that there's tension between the residents and the merchants. You will exacerbate that tension specifically in the historic district unless you are very responsive to all persons' needs, both on-street and off-street. So there's a lot to consider in making such fundamental changes to the code. Thank you.
This is a problem I hear a lot about, zoning in particular, and I think that my opinion on zoning is, in terms of a percentage, me giving you a number is irrelevant. It has to do with many factors, as I'm saying. And it's not for me to come up with a number at a debate, out of the air here. So I think that I support the current commissioners who are, as they said, redoing the entire code, sort of from the ground up, it sounds like. And I would assume hiring professionals to opine on environmental concerns, value concerns to the property, and other things of that nature. So I don't think I can give you a number that's going to make any sense, because I'm not a subject matter expert in what percentage of a property should be impervious or a dwelling or anything like that. That's for the professionals to tell us how to change that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's clearly no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. But I do think in zoning, and I think it's great that we are reworking the codes, reworking. I'm sure it needs to be done. Case-by-case situations, I think, allow for a little bit of common sense to come into play. And I think our government should be here to help us and not hinder us and set up roadblocks every step of the way. So, that being said, that's sort of my take on what percentage should your of your lot should be allowed to be built on. Let's, it's case by case sort of basis, and it's not just absolutely not, this is the law here, and so no, let's work together. It's really what needs to happen.
I pretty much agree with everyone. Being commissioner of St. Michael's is about looking at each issue on a case-by-case basis. I can never give you a percentage because of the extraordinary differences in the lots in town, the location to water, critical areas, historic, coming up against other uses. I have a distillery that's located next to someone's backyard. You have to be very cautious of those things. So there's factors that are beyond, it's not black and white all the time. And so this is a perfect example of a question that the commissioners face on a daily basis where judgment calls to come into play. So setting up parameters, but we've recently adjusted the sidewalk legislation to say up to or no more than 50%, things like that where there is interpretation. And while I'm all for consistency and being fair across the board, you have to look at each situation in its unique way. So,
My first look at this is I would go to the HDC and I would tell you less is more. We are a very lucky community, and we have some really very interesting old homes and old architecture. And supersizing these old houses and adding to them and making them fancy mansions and all that. And there's a number of them in town that have done that. I was on the HDC for a number of years, and we worked really hard to not have any that's visible from the public way. Less is more. And I think that we should continue down that path and work towards less is more. Thank you.
I also think there's no real precise number you can go ahead and throw out at. That would be crazy to try and just throw a number at you. But I do think this is a good time to plug residents showing up for public work sessions, especially in rewriting of zoning, anytime you can participate, because commissioners need to hear every detail and what's unique about everyone's situation, so everybody can be included in the answers that they come up with in the rewriting of the zoning. So And my own personal feeling on it is that this number, as it comes about, should definitely preserve the vibe of the town, which is a small town, historic homes, just like that said.
There is no way to legislate good business. It's impossible. Businesses should be allowed to flourish on their business merit. Markets, will, especially like this, are going to regulate themselves. If somebody comes in with a store that nobody wants to buy anything, it's not going to be there for very long. That said, I think that there are probably some things we should legislate against. I don't want to get into specifics and offend anybody, but there's probably some publication stores that we don't want on Talbot Street, for instance, selling certain wares that we don't want our town to be known for. So aside from those sort of outliers, I think that business is business. It's going to regulate itself.
Yes, there are codes saying that those types of stores are not allowed already, and that's okay. I don't know if anyone's ever been to P-Town, Provincetown in Mass, that's kind of fun, but we don't need to be P-Town. The businesses will regulate itself, and unfortunately, the reason we lost the banks in town was not due to anything the commissioners did or that the town did wrong. You know, it's e-commerce and it's automatic deposit and it's ATMs and everything else that's coming now. So businesses will regulate themselves. And as far as influence, I'm not sure really how to answer that, honestly. I think if you allow influence, then people start to maybe try to slide under the table and, shady dealings might ensue. So I think I would have to say no, that they should not be able to influence the type of business that we come to town.
The commissioners absolutely should not influence what business opens, but absolutely the zoning reflects what businesses are appropriate in what areas. I have a manufacturing business. It's not appropriate in certain areas of town. I think that if zoning is set up correctly and you have businesses set up for success in communities and next to neighbors that are working together, you keep everybody happy, because we have a very interesting overlay of what's next to what. So when it comes to issues like noise ordinances, and you have a vibrant restaurant that wants to play music, you need to make sure that it's next to residents, those residents understand that and are okay with that. And so that's a lot of the struggle. So absolutely, business should be able to, as long as it's adhering to whatever codes, whether it's the alcohol enforcement, whether it's as long as it has its business permits in order, the town should then step out of their business and just make sure that we have an environment where they can thrive.
I would echo what everybody else has said about commissioners should absolutely have no influence on businesses. Now, businesses and codes and other businesses, the high bar that is set, certainly on Main Street, will influence businesses that come there. Now, several of the candidates before talked about, sketchy businesses. Several years ago, when I was a commissioner, this subject came up, and there actually is in the code an area of town that has been designated for that. And it's something that's so many feet from churches and so many feet from schools and so many feet from here. But there is a spot, and we had to have a spot because there was something about the democracy that you couldn't exclude certain things. So the answer is commissioners should not have any say on business. The business model that comes, how it's operated, free enterprise will dictate whether that business is successful.
I'm not going to surprise you here. The commission shouldn't have to say what a business is. That's the party line for sure. I do think, though, that commissioners in the town can advocate for certain businesses that if they were lost would be a detriment to our community. And so one example that I deal with on waterways would be the amount of slips we set aside for watermen or rebuilding a waterman's dock. I think that's the type of thing where we can influence business that's going to drive tourism and it's going to preserve our heritage here in town. So I do believe in that.
The town's codes already address prohibition against some businesses. And the quickest way to see the town's budget get out of whack is to adopt some discriminatory policies. It's an invitation for lawsuits. But due process and the checks and balances that are already part of our governmental regulations prevent that. The commissioners can influence businesses. If an application is denied or approved, the commission can appeal it just as the landowner or businessman can. So I would suggest that before anybody makes a leap of faith and wants to dictate policy to an otherwise capitalist society, they first get a comprehensive understanding of the town's current code and regulations. It already provides a very good due process and check and balance. Thank you.
We absolutely need more available housing for elderly, for long-term workers, for people to live nearby that actually staff and keep our businesses running and afloat. This has been an issue that I've listened to several business owners lament over, the fact that we have a hard time filling vacancies in our staffing pool because it's just too far and nobody can afford to live here. So that is something that I would definitely work towards as commissioner.
I think workforce housing is currently a problem. We have a lot of businesses that are growing and they can't seem to find anywhere for their staff to live. Was not under my doing, but the previous commission worked very hard to get Riverwoods up and active, and so that is one fantastic example of workforce housing that works. It's tricky though, because we don't have, there's no easy opportunity to say this is where the next thing should go. So currently the commission is looking at rewriting a portion of the code that would allow for a more friendly environment for workforce housing for multiple people that are unrelated to live in one house. And we are currently, just that was at our most recent meeting that we addressed that. So looking to what other towns have done that's successful, but keeping in balance, because again, balance is key between the amount of people that live here, work here, and thrive here. So yes.
Absolutely. And Jamie brought up Riverwoods. Not sure how many people remember what was the old Douglas High School, but it was really a bad scene. And that project has worked out. I can say that I was a part of it early on, and I'm pleased for it. Yes, we have to work towards housing for employment. The biggest problem this town has, in the long run pictures, we don't have employees. Perry Cabin needs employees. Lynx is going to need employees. Last year, Crab and Steakhouse closed several days during the week because we didn't have employees. And there's a number of reasons for that, which was part of where I was going early on, but I ran out of time. But yes, we all need to work on that, because unless we have young people in town, unless we have young people with kids, we don't have a community, and it is an issue, and I would absolutely.
I think I stated earlier the one change to zoning would be accessory dwellings. I look at it on a personal level for if, my property is big enough to subdivide. I don't want to subdivide it, but I would like to have the ability to have my family. I think our neighborhood has, my personal neighborhood, Railroad to Perry Cabin Park, we have a lot of multi-generation families in that area, and the ability to set up a separate house, accessory dwelling on the same property as the main nucleus of the family would be a huge advantage for them, as opposed to buying a new parcel of land. I do think that workforce housing is important. In my personal life, I have 6 or 7 employees that sign up for 1-year contracts. They bring a lot to the town, and we do a lot of training with these employees. So being able to house them together as a unit is important to me.
2015 comp plan does have policy goals on workforce housing. What it doesn't have is any solutions. Now, it's no secret that the town of St. Michael's is a relatively affluent and expensive area. Financial feasibility for workforce housing, therefore, doesn't work in your typical formula. It will require a federal, state, or private subsidy in the form of grants. Grants are available, but you have to go look for them. You have to be aggressive when you apply for them. You have to follow up. So I think implementing the policy goals in the comp plan is ideal, but the reality is it's not a panacea, and I don't want to blow smoke. It's difficult to make workforce housing work in an area such as the town of St. Michael's, where land is expensive and short. But there are remedies available, and I'd like to pursue those on behalf of the town.
At the last commissioners meeting, 2 young men representing 2 large businesses in town came and had a couple viable solutions that sounded pretty good. And one of the things that I think that we need to make sure when we hear these solutions from these lawyers is that we are protecting the idea of workforce housing versus the idea of a bunch of people just moving into a house and causing chaos. It's something other towns and part of the county has to deal with, and I think that when we realize our solution, whatever it is, we need to make sure that it's included in the legislation to make sure that we are explicitly trying to allow people to live better lives and not fostering a potentially dangerous or bad situation for young children or other folks in need.
So this has been a huge issue for a very long time, and something I was intimately involved in. On first glance, I think if it could be perfect, I would love to see the power lines removed. Yes, they are unsightly. Yes, some of the transformers are dicey. However, what the commission did was what was most appropriate. We set a committee to identify all possible solutions and then evaluate it from that. It was a long process, and I absolutely thank everyone that worked on it. I was surprised by my own reaction. I thought I would want to bury the lines. As a former photographer, visual beauty is very important to me, but safety is also key. Looking at the undertaking of burying the power lines in St. Michael's is no easy task. Having a main street that is also a state highway and thoroughfare, the idea of disrupting that and what was presented to the commission, something like 34 manholes down a 1 mile stretch, 18 to 36 months potentially of construction. Not only do I not want to live through that, but I would never subject anyone to that, let alone the extraordinary cost associated with it. So at this time, I'm not in favor of burying the power lines.
Disagree. I was on a committee that worked for 3.5 years roughly on figuring out how to relocate the lines on Talbot Street. It's not burying them, it's relocate them. We met with Verizon, we met with Atlantic Broadband, we went to Chop Tank, we met with some private contractors. I was very discouraged that the commissioners, canned it. Ultimately, something needs to be done, something will be done. Maybe it'll all be replaced there. 2/3 of what you see up there today is obsolete. And the object was to move them off of Main Street, not bury them on Main Street. I heard that the commissioners didn't like the $11 million it would cost. I would say that is a starting point for negotiation. I wouldn't say that's the ultimate number. Remember back, Miles Point was 18 million and we settled for something considerably less than that. So I don't think that project should be stopped. I think we need to continue because ultimately we're the only small tourist town on Eastern Shore that has that mess. Thank you.
First of all, I'll say it's my understanding that if something fails on the power lines, it's no cost to us to fix it. So it's my opinion that we would just leave it as is, and as it needs replacing, that'll happen on its own without town's money. I would also say, I can't give you specific examples, but if we have $11 million to bury power lines, I think with some brainstorming, we come up with a better way to serve our community with that money rather than just making Main Street look a little bit better.
Really loaded questions, by the way. They're great. Professionally, I currently represent State Highway Administration, PG&E, PEPCO, and Dominion Energy. I've got a lot of experience with power lines, pro and con. There is a way to beautify our streetscapes. Co-location is one. Encouraging cooperation among the various providers. An impediment will be the impact on real estate that is contiguous to these lines. The workaround there is to avoid easements in favor of licenses. It doesn't create a proprietary interest in the real estate, but it allows flexibility of the movement of these lines. So there are workarounds. They are not easily achieved, and all the stakeholders will have to come. Burying lines beautifies an area and greatly increases maintenance costs to those lines. So there's always going to be a give and take in any decision matrix that is undertaken. It can be done, and I would agree more with Tad. You're going to relocate them, you're not going to remove them. Thank you.
If you get a bid and you don't like the answer, you get somebody else to give you a cost. Now, maybe that's what they did, but I certainly think that there are other options to just burying the power lines for $11 million, and it doesn't sound like you've heard them all. There is a crumbling infrastructure in our country with power and telecommunications, and I don't think we're doing that hot down here, judging by my internet speed. So I think that we could probably look at alternative options to getting somebody to help us with that relocation. And I think that if it's something that people keep bringing up, it's something the commissioners need to continue to address. Again, if you don't like the answer you get from the first person, you ask a few others.
I'm sure no power lines on Main Street would be very aesthetically pleasing. But I fully agree with Michael that if we're going to spend $14 million or 11 or 8 or 20 in doing something to make something a little prettier, we could probably figure out a better way to spend the money. I personally would like to progress past this and look at potentially bringing fiber optic internet to St. Michael's, because I believe now at least 90% of businesses, if not all, rely on internet to do their daily transactions. And when this town's full, that comes to a grinding halt. So that's definitely a challenge. I am not for relocating power lines, because I think if they're already 2/3 obsolete, a few more years will be completely obsolete, and then we can just take it down.
Well, that's another one of my favorite topics. The very first thing that needs to be done is we need to get Bill Harvey to find out what can be done with the current town office. Before anything happens, we need to determine what we can do with that. If we can do with that, can we sell it? What can happen? After that determination is made, then it's obvious to me that the town office needs to go back where it was years ago, and that's on Talbot Street. We owned a building there, we rented to a real estate agent. There was a town office years ago. The town office included the police station and the meeting room. We already own it. We can put a little money in to fix it up, and there's no reason to spend another $1.5 million, $2 million on another municipal building. Thank you.
Well, this would be a good example as alternate use instead of burying power lines to me. And I'm a firm believer in more parks, so I think building a new town hall, if that's what is necessary, and taking it off that property and opening up that property as a bigger town park for community enjoyment would be a good thing. I think we lack I'd like to see a permanent home for the farmers market, and that current town hall spot could be a good spot for that. It would be a good place for the community in general. Is that a stop? No? Oh, okay. But if we give the money, millions of dollars to bury power lines, we can certainly build a new town hall that functions for the community, and be able to host a crowd this size of the town hall would be nice.
Yeah, very loaded question. The town currently has $28 million in assets and $3 million in liabilities. So it's fairly well equipped to do whatever the town folk want it to do in regard to this solution. But to acquire property, to build government level improvements is expensive. There are alternatives. You can have a private sector build to suit where the town would rent as opposed to own. That way, as the property becomes obsolete over time, the town's not stuck with what do we do as an exit strategy. The exit strategy is you don't pay rent on that property anymore. So really it's a question of financial feasibility. You have to look at the alternatives, look at the locations, look at the costs, and look at the needs of the town. We put a lot of pressure on town staff to deliver services. You need to make sure that they have a proper environment to do that work. We put a lot of pressure on our police force. They need a lot of resources, including space. So these are not easy decisions. I look forward to helping work.
It seems like the town has a lot of property that they own, a lot of nice property. So on Talbot Street, this waterfront property that we're talking about right now. I wonder if we could liquidate some of that to finance either the purchase or refurbishment of the other properties. And then when we do that, make a property that has enough use to actually have some income. For instance, the property that it's on now, if we were to demolish that and make a park, like Michael said, that was potentially rentable for events to start generating some income. Build a town office with a space as large as this and have private functions in it when the town workers are not there. So I think that there's a lot of interesting options that we can explore. The town certainly seems to have a lot of nice property. I don't know if it needs it all, because it doesn't seem like it's using it all right now.
Yes, we do need a new town office. Those poor, our poor town workers and the temperature variations and the mold and everything I've heard about it is, sounds fairly unsuitable for a town with the assets that it has. I personally, Fremont Street, I think in that area, if that lot is one of the options, there's a lot on the corner of Fremont and North, I believe. I think that would be a great spot for a new town hall, because then you have the whole north side of St. Michael's become part of St. Michael's. They're sort of out there on their own right now, so I think by moving something as vital as the town hall, town office to an area like that would be a good idea. And I really also like the idea of a park with an event space, a lovely gazebo, a permanent home for the farmer's market. All of that would be wonderful in Hollis Park. And as far as funding, these guys have all they know more about that than I do, so. Thanks.
This is an issue that's very close to my heart and something we've been working on for the last couple of years. Every idea that was just discussed is something that has been thoroughly vetted by the current commission. We had another study for both the police station and a town office, potential sites, potential options. Personally, through analyzing that research as well as my own beliefs, I believe that Hollis Park should be a park. I believe that that town office has lived its life. It was purchased, the land was purchased with a grant from Project Open Space, and I think the idea of maintaining open waterfront space for our community is outstanding. Oh, stop. We recently acquired the old doctor's office on Boundaries Lane, and I think that is an absolutely phenomenal spot for a gateway property to welcome visitors to town, to have a large viable space for a new office. I too thought Fremont would be an amazing municipal row, but after looking at the pros and cons of both properties in depth, I've settled on Boundary Lane for a new construction. Refitting this, former spaces is fantastic when it works. Town's history of putting business into homes and it doesn't work, so thank you.